Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. It is my pleasure to introduce Connecticut Poet Laureate Margaret Gibson, editor of the anthology Waking Up to the Earth, Connecticut Poets in a Time of Global Crisis, and author of 12 books of poems and one forthcoming volume, The Glass Globe, scheduled to be released in August. The recipient of multiple awards for her poetry, Ms. Gibson is Professor Emerita at the University of Connecticut and was appointed Connecticut Poet Laureate in 2019 for a 3-year term. In that role, she has taken as her social focus poetry and the environment during climate crisis, for which she was awarded an Academy of American Poets grant for poet laureates. A portion of this grant funded the anthology, from which 10 of the poets will be reading their poems this evening, as well as videos of Connecticut poets reading their poems in natural settings. Although we are in a virtual setting this evening, the poems in this volume will surely deepen our understanding of the natural world, waking us up to the earth. And now I turn the program over to our esteemed Connecticut Poet Laureate, Margaret Gibson.
Thank you, Anne. It's really a pleasure to be hosted by the Norfolk Library and to be cared for and guided by you. You've been a wonderful organizer, and I want to thank Susannah Lawrence, who approached Norfolk Library for this program and for getting it off the ground. And I want to thank everyone for coming. Poets have always written about the earth, particularly one's local habitation, but it has become so obvious now that the entire planet is our house, is our home. Ecology, that word in Greek comes from the Greek word for house or home. And we are in a global climate crisis. Poets in Waking Up to the Earth are waking up and paying closer attention to the earth in a kind of mindful way, while their eyes are sometimes on political and social issues that directly connect with climate crisis. Most of the time, the focus is on local habitation, on other creatures, on specific landscapes, on human activity in specific landscapes. The thing that I think, taken all together, pleases me the most about the anthology is that it's a record of poems that call us home to ourselves as human inhabitants who are not separate from the earth, who will flourish or be injured not alone, but with others on this earth. Some of the poems give a call for action. Others call us to pay attention to what is around us and to actually be part of the world we inhabit. I don't want to take much time talking about the anthology. It's been a project that's dear to my heart. It includes 63 poets from Connecticut, and a few are here tonight, 10 of us, and I want to hear their poems, so I'm going to stop talking. The first poet who's reading is also the editor of Grayson Books, which published Waking Up to the Earth. And for those of you just tuning in, this is what the book looks like. And you can go to www.graysonbooks.com and order a copy, and I hope you will. Jenny is our first reader. She is a poet as well as the editor of Grayson Books. And her latest book is called Toward the Hanging Tree, Poems of Salem Village. Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Kelly and Anne, and everyone who made time to be here today. My poem is called Stone Harvest. It refers to stone walls, old stone walls, which I think are particularly beautiful. And I also believe that they show something about the interaction between people and the earth that they inhabit. The poem is in 6 small parts, and you should know that it moves back and forth through time. Stone Harvest. 1. Fields return to forest. Years ago, the farmers left, but stone walls remember them. Miles of walls in disrepair. What a crop of stone those farmers had. I doubt they found beauty in them, just more hard labor. But I admire the tumbled walls, meandering in autumn sun and shadow. Histories here, among a clutter of leaves, curling vines and fallen logs. Islands of pale lichen bloom on the stone's rough surfaces, and soft green moss invites my touch. 2. New England potatoes, they called them, Satan's seeds. The harvest of stones heaved up by frost, by roots, by burrowing critters each year in fields once cleared. Another endless chore to toss them to the edges of fields. Or pile rocks on a stone sled, let the oxen pull. Heaps of stone turned into boundary walls, packed together with uprooted stumps and wooden rails, built and rebuilt with increasing care. Men laid stones 1 on 2 or 2 on 1 like brickwork, capped with flat field stones, sheep high, bull strong, hog tight. 3. The rocks are flecked with mica, mineral streaked with rivulets dark and light. They keep company with bindweed, bits of wood, seeds, and leaves, rest among ferns and pokeweed. A few are blackened, stained perhaps by campfires centuries ago, when bands of people roamed these woods but had no need for walls. Unplowed, the topsoil then was so thick with humus, most stones say buried secrets in the soil. 4. When I rest my palms against a rock, I feel the heat it's holding. But these stones hold memory of glaciers, huge ice sheets that scraped the earth and carved out slabs of bedrock. The ice retreated slowly, dropping stones along the way. 5. Storm-tossed trees have fallen on the walls. Roots and vines nudge them apart. Seeds fall into crevices hidden there. The chipmunks, mice, squirrels. Young trees take root and grow between the rocks, squeezing them apart. The new must push against the old, and storms take some of us down, the plot of every history. But remnants of wall are still here, weathered and leached, eroded and stained, the stones marvelous in their variety, their stubborn persistence. 6. I touch a mossy stone tumbled near the dirt road where I'm walking. Finger its scratches and stains. My skin carries its own share of creases, marks, and scars after so many years of living, loving, working. What more can I ask but that I've been of some use before it's my turn to fall away and settle into whatever may come next. Thank you.
Margaret, you're muted. We need you to unmute.
I'm sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. Okay, the next poet is Rennie McQuilkin. And Rennie co-founded the Sunken Garden Poetry Series many years ago. It's still going on. And he served as Connecticut Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2018. He also received the Connecticut Center for the Book Lifetime's Achievement Award. Rennie.
Thank you, Margaret. I hope I'm audible. Thumbs up. Okay, good. Some time before this current pandemic, and I think specifically in 2018, December 25th, 24th actually, of 2018, my daughter announced that there was a snowy owl to be seen on the shores of Lake Ontario, come down from the tundra. And a group of us decided to follow her lead, and we bushwhacked and went through some pretty interesting terrain to get there. And indeed, we found the snowy owl with a little help from some Audubon viewers who were pointing their telescopes in that direction, or we never would have seen the thing. It was disguised so cleverly as a boulder. So this poem is entitled Christmas Eve Afternoon at Braddock Bay, for Eleanor, of course, and Will, who saw the Audubon sighters. Christmas Eve afternoon at Braddock Bay, and it was said that we should go to see this thing come to us from afar. So we set forth over fields, simplified by snow and ice, bent low to negotiate an avenue of wild rose arched by weight of winter, its ripe red hips, past a stand of cattails, umber seed tubes broken into beige wool redolent as spice, and came to an endless lake, steel blue under a lowering anthracite sky ornamented by salmon trim at its distant edge. Along the shore, past bare willows glowing from within, a serration of waves broke, all but frozen. From the rock-ridden jut of a long spit hung teeth of ice, a place as austere as the cold cattle shed and tooth-gnawed slats of a small corn crib we'd hallow as a manger that night. Nursery of God. Here, now, at the heart of wilderness, was the mystery we'd come far to see. At first, nothing, a white-topped, white and gray striped boulder at the far end of the promontory. Then the white top of the boulder moved, swiveled like a lighthouse, illuminating a circle of the world, searching into us the oval, gold-eyed face of a snowy owl from the Arctic tundra, a creature so fiercely itself, it was the proof I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Rennie. Our next reader is Jose B. Gonzalez, who is the author of Toys Made of Rock and When Love Was Reels. He's a co-editor also of Latino Boom, an anthology of U.S. Latino literature. Jose.
All right, thank you, Margaret. Thank you on this beautiful day. I'm going to read a poem called And Then I Read About. Another confession. Before she left Earth, I never asked her to teach me about Earth. So I read books about planting, and I learned about water and how much was too little and how much could kill the roots. And I understood why she left El Salvador's earthquakes. And then I started to read books about soil and how crops should be moved. And I understood why she had no choice but to move Yanni and me. And then I read about landslides, and I understood why she brought her mother and her sister to live with us. And then I read about deforestation and how only Haiti was worse than our old country. And then I remembered how they said that she looked toward the sky when she took her last breath. And then I looked at the trees and saw what her eyes had dreamed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Our next poet is Susannah Lawrence. Susannah is an environmentalist activist and a poet whose book, Just Above the Bone, appeared in 2016. It's thanks to her inspiration that we're having this reading. Susannah.
Thank you, Margaret. Storm advisory. Do you hear that wind? Bees, thousands of bees. Do you think the red oak is safe? Something heavy moved out there, roused, I'm sure of it. How can you sleep? The dogs barked at the east window, raced to the north one, won't settle. What do they know? The wind's tearing at the trees, shredding them in pieces. When I shake your shoulder, it feels loose. Clouds barrel past, strobe the moon. Dark again. No lights in the valley. Is our power on? I'm going to wake you. Isn't that the siren? Isn't it going too long? I can barely hear over the wind. It sounds like fire roar. What happened last time? What did they do? Did we ever find those instructions? Oh, there's the rain. It smells strange. Oil, plastic, not like wet grass. Aren't you awake yet? So many trees in danger. You're mumbling. I can't read your face. Better to stay, to go. Did you lock the door? I'm trying to remember when we planted the basswood, the 2 birches, the elm for Owen. They're okay, aren't they? You still love me, don't you? There it is again, closer. Did you hear it this time? Will no one tell us when? Why will no one say where it's safe? We did everything we could, didn't we? Didn't we?
Yeah. Such a haunting question. Thank you, Susannah. Our next poet is Daveen Verstandig, who is Professor Emerita at the University of Connecticut, and she's the former Town Poet Laureate of Washington, Connecticut. Welcome, Daveen.
Thank you. The title of the poem is, "It is a full green morning before the death of George Floyd. I am working from my perch just below the treetops, seeing into leaves. Below, lilies of the valley hide beneath spreading bleeding hearts, waiting to be picked and placed on my window altar where violets and forget-me-nots once held a place. A single purple iris sits beside Kuan Yin, she who hears the cries of the world. The scent of the lilacs by the blue door, faint. Spring green darkens, a late spring. June arriving in a few days. And I am something like happy here in this green quiet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daveen. Frederick Douglass Knowles is current Town Poet Laureate of Hartford, and he's the professor of English at Three Rivers College and the author of the book Black Rose City. Frederick.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm going to share my poem, Without Sunglasses Anymore. It makes reference to locations in Norwich, Connecticut, where I grew up in my childhood, without sunglasses anymore. We used to be best friends. You couldn't wait for me to bolt off the bus, toss my books and venture. We were night and noon, moon and sun. Nothing I would do without you. Hide behind that 18th hole, snatch golf balls, slip into brooks, leap bold streams, BMX my bike over makeshift pyramids, pick berries, play hide and go seek, hot peas and butter, red light, green light, kick the can, freeze tag, football, and that's my car. We used to be the best of friends. Rendezvous up Oakwood Knoll, run, catch, and kiss behind Uncas School, moonbeams bouncing off bodies. Then I changed, no longer had time, became too busy, complained about the weather. What happened to how we played? Melrose Park, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I no longer talk to you except to wipe the tears falling from God's cries. I'm sorry I don't stare without sunglasses anymore. I'm sorry a snowstorm sends me inside instead of the backyard to cookie cut angels into your frosting. I'm sorry your daughter in autumn makes the leaves fall to feed worms and I rake them for aesthetics. We were best friends since kindergarten. Then I grew, I thought. What I really did was wither, shrank into schemes of rich and popular, ignored your pop laws, logged illegally for corporatocracy. Pollutants dumped into ponds I pitched rocks into. I used to feed the ducks with my daughters with you. Now I duck from seagulls fertilizing your maternal shore. Melrose, I'm sorry. I miss our summer bike rides, blackening my melanin. I miss your woods, Jane arms unfurling into an equinox. I miss poison ivy, skunk cabbage, pussy willows, dandelions, tadpoles, black ants, red ants, black red ants, horseflies, dragonflies, houseflies, not houseflies, but I miss lifting trash cans, watching maggots I want to fly dance. I miss digging earthworms to watch them squirm, then burrow back into your bosom. I miss seeded grapes, sour apples, ripe tomatoes, collard greens, okra. I miss Gammy's rosebush. Now the honeybees vanish without a trace, so who's going to pollinate your purple hibiscus? We used to be best friends since kindergarten. But when I traded my playground for PlayStation, Tire 2 for YouTube, I never knew I missed skyscrapers of uncut grass, tickling my inner child while sleeping under a quilt of dreams, squinting without shades as tiny purple dragons soar your lemon summer smile, searching for the friend who built castles from sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Our next poet is Sarah P. Strong. Sarah P. Strong is the author of 2 novels and 2 books of poems, most recently, The Mouth of the Earth. They teach creative writing at Central Connecticut State University. Sarah.
Thank you, Margaret. The poem I'm going to read is called Anthropocene Birthday. And for those unfamiliar with the term, Anthropocene is the word proposed by geologists to name the new geological epoch that we are arguably in, an epoch defined by humans' extreme impact on the planet. Anthropocene Birthday. Gift of equations. The empty orchard blossoming with snow. Gift of a haunting, the shadows of the animals in smoke. Gift of a cinder, the stars leapt from the bottom of the well. Gift of scar tissue, the after image scored for us like notes. Gift of our silence, so gently the sea covers up our words. Gift of a fever, the smell of thunder breaking up the heat. Gift of a morning, the votive candles going out like breath. Gift of our footsteps, the leaves we saw caught in the hedge are birds. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Benjamin S. Grossberg is Director of Creative Writing at the University of Hartford and the author of the book, My Husband Would.
I'm going to read a poem called Not Children. This is from a series about planting an apple orchard, which I did many years ago. Not children. I know. But let me describe how gently I pulled apart the plastic, the cowl, how the plastic split at its stapled seam, revealing wet, olive-colored bark. I'm not exaggerating when I say I've never seen anything more beautiful in the human body, though it did most resemble human skin. Let me talk about the winnowing of fingers through barrows of the local clay, cut with composted horse manure. Fingers, arms up to the elbow, sifting, mixing, breaking up clumps of the compost, feathering it over heavy clay, aerating, leavening, darkening. Let me describe the speckled brown, how the mixed medium had richness, felt good on the palms, soft on the soft parts of the body. Now imagine yourself bending with me, lifting a tree from the plastic, extricating a single sapling from the bundle, how your fingers relearn gentleness, unlacing the hair of roots from other roots, how in the manner of a mother washing a child, you touch the most vulnerable parts of the tree, the places where it would be frighteningly easy to choke off life. And now let's stand together, lift it from its plastic and wash it down again, the pressure of the hose blocked by your palm so water falls easily on the young trunk. Its place in the world is prepared. Bring it over, rest it in as if into human arms. The earth will love the thing no more than we do. And now imagine yourself with me, stepping back from the planted sapling. Feel how you steep and rise, how your chest fills, and then the slow, steady release of air. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Vivian Shipley, our next reader, is CSU Distinguished Professor and has taught at Southern Connecticut University since 1969. Her 12th book of poems, An Archaeology of Days, was published in 2019. Vivian.
Hi. That's better. This poem, Trespassers at Morgan Point, actually happened. Our summer home is at Morgan Point, which is the first point after Lighthouse Point. It juts out into Long Island Sound. And so while I don't mind people coming out and sharing the point in the water, when they start breaking Stolichnaya blue vodka bottles on the rocks to create blue seagrass and so on, that's when I can draw the line. So this is a poem about that. Cautious as a stag leading does into a clearing, two fishermen looked toward the house, just checking. As if crossing a lawn they had newly seeded, their steps were shortened, rods held low. Heading for the black rocks, one holds the hand of his son, knowing full well their zodiac is beached above high water on the pink granite. Not trying to claim they are lost, confused, or sorry. It's anger that simmers in their throats, idling like an outboard motor. As I point to private property, a United jet takes off from Tweed, New Haven, censors bitch. No Roy Tory Peterson. These two won't teach the boy to tell a snowy egret, from a white heron, an egret's black bill, black legs, and yellow feet. Busy popping cans off Rolling Rock, the father doesn't point to another egret shuffling feet about in order to stir up shiners, a habit white herons don't have. Teaching his son to break bottles for sea glass, he calls a cormorant crow as it spreads wings like an eagle. We're all trespassers of one sort or another, but that does it. I dial East Haven police to demand protection. Then I gloat while snapper after snapper jumps as if drawn by a magnet into the cove. Badge or no badge, I know these two fishermen will resurface, the boy carrying beer. On good days or bad, they'll be back. If riptide feathers the sound, it will be a sign to them, irrepressible as tide. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. I want to thank everyone who's read. The order of the poems actually is a little similar to the order of poems in this reading. It's a little similar to the order of poems in the book, which contains poems that celebrate and praise. But as the book goes on, there are rumbles and warnings and a different kind of awareness of potential loss and crisis comes into the book. I'm going to read the last poem in the book, my poem, Irrevocable. Very few poems, actually talked about any kind of collective action that we might be involved in. I love Vivian going there, scaring people off. The last poem in the book, Irrevocable, offers a kind of warning, a kind of vision of what might happen if we don't wake up to this earth and to our lives and make some changes. It is at the same time a poem that praises and celebrates what we're losing. It's the last poem in the Glass Globe. The first poem in that book, I washed the body of my late husband right after he had died. And one of the things that concerns me often is how do we know what to do on a personal level, on personal relationships. We're adept at that. But what do we do when we're looking at the possible demise of the earth? As Sarah pointed out, the Anthropocene may bring the sixth extinction. And then I thought, well, maybe on the planetary level, we can just do what we in fact do on the personal level. So in this poem, the speaker washes the body of the earth. The poem is called Irrevocable. Someone no longer alive is hovering over a great expanse of smartweed, panic grass, and midden where a house used to be, where trees and gardens once flourished, where puddles and ponds held a sky of clouds and stars in place for a moment, and you lived there. Ah, my dear. I speak from the liminal space where your beloved's last barely audible breath slipped into your body, then out the window into the winter chill, whose horizon line rolled up as if it were twined into a point, a still point, a full stop that opens the heart. From that point, I speak. As once you washed the body of your beloved, let us wash for the last time this one earth, this only and only once, for once and for all earth, as if it were a lover who has died, and we, not knowing what to do, at last must wash the poles, north and south, where long ago the ice cracked open, sheared off, and melted. Last, the mountain peaks, last, the crown of oaks and maples, on whose bare branches long strips of torn plastic flutter. Also steeples, the turrets, the domes. Last, the open fields and meadows, wash them clean, the vast desert and its last oasis, riverbed and shrunken rills, ravines and gullies, the rocky promontories from which we viewed the sea as it rose to cover the cities. Last, the cities, submerged full fathom or in low tide, only the towers and tips of the high-rises winking up. Last, the sidewalks, shop windows, market stalls. Last, pebble, shell, and skull. Last, lark and satellite, wash them, and the field of broken mirrors. Last, the house, last, the bed. Last, the hills of midden and their treasures, a button, a seed, a feather, a zipper, a chip of china plate. Last, the nose cone, the black box. Last, the trawler, the landing gear, the microchipped, the missing part. Last, the kiva, the sweat lodge, the drum. Last, the prayer rugs, the pews, the cushions. Last, the seat of enlightenment beneath what remains of a small tree's spreading canopy. Last, the factories, the foundries, the mills, the maze of subway tunnels, the turnstiles. Last, the eye of the needle through which we could not pass. Last, a gun, a mine, a missile. Last, a bridge. Last, middle C on the piano. Last, a cello, a violoncello, in particular, the Sonata for Violoncello No. 2 in D, precious because it was the last music you listened to, precious because like the last word your beloved spoke, you didn't know it was last. Last, the pattern of fish displayed on ice and their many-eyed, one-eyed gaze. Last, the last whale beached on the shore at Truro. Last, the glint of an eye and the periwinkle, the lovely sinuous ripple of a reclusive snake. Last, the chemicals, the vitamins, the pills, the chemicals. Last, a hearing aid, a pair of binoculars, a surgeon's knife, a sling, a robotic hand. Last, to list only a few from the multitude that perished: fox and laughing gull, swallowtail and hawk, lion, panther, giraffe, mosquito, trillium, hummingbird, hibiscus, owl. Last, the very last line in a poem by Rilke, the line you can't forget the ache of, the line you didn't enact, not one syllable of it. You must change your life. Space, of course, lasts. I walk upon it as one would on a tablecloth for a table no one will set. What's left of my eyesight has dimmed. What I hear is only wind, and that muted. And because I have nothing to write on, I build cairn after cairn, lifting stones, balancing them, touching what remains in place as if it were a new alphabet or a sentence in Braille. You are reading the last of the earth's last rivers and mountains. Do you know that? These stones, these silences, these last words held in mind for a moment, as if they were a net of fireflies shimmering in a summer field one can't tell apart from a night sky and stars. Wash them, each stone, each firefly. Wash them clean. This one, a love cry, that one, lament, and the last one, the wing of a warning you might still be able to hear, just as once long ago, You caught the smoke of the oracle rising from a rift zone at the center of the earth. If these cairns, these stone syllables survive, there may be no one left to read the poem they make. But if by chance there is, let the stones be read aloud so that a human voice might widen its reach, floating off to the stars like the ringing through of a great bronze bell, like the audible layers of birdsong gradually moving west as dawn brightens or used to, and the great earth turns. So we began with the stone wall, and we end with this reading, with reading the stones of cairns as if they were words and sending them out into the universe. We actually have some time, I think, for questions and answers, and I would like to invite the poets who were very careful of their time and didn't say very much about their poems to speak about them, to say something about your poem, what you learned when you were writing it, how it feels to have that poem in the company of others in this book. Can poems actually change things? What about social action and poetry? So invite voices, questions and answers, questions which we will try to find the answers from our listeners, and perhaps a discussion among our wonderful poets who've read here this afternoon. Thank you all for coming. All the poets and all the people who are here. Okay, let's have some questions.
This is Kelly from the Norfolk Library. So after listening to these poems and feeling inspired to share some of my own words through poetry, but being very scared of poetry as a medium to write in, because it seems elusive and the language is so specific. If you've never really written poems before, how does one even get started?
Okay, assembled poets, does anyone want to take that question on?
Start.
How does one start?
So basically you're just saying get started, just try it.
Write it down, write what you see. My poem, Trespassers at Morgan Point, literally happened. These guys came out on a Zodiac. They knew they shouldn't have been there. Okay with me. They start breaking bottles. They're cursing. They're screaming. They're having a great time. They have this little boy with them, which absolutely drove me bonkers. And I wrote about it because I was just so angry with them. And I literally did finally call. For the one and only time I've ever done this, I called the police and they came. And so I wrote about this poem. And we lived near the airport. A plane came over. So just write what you know, write it down. That's what everybody is doing. And they're trying to translate their reality into a larger experience. So the first thing you got to do is just start writing, put words down.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. It looks like Sarah wanted to add to that. So if you want to unmute.
Yeah, I was going to add, Kelly, something that the poet C. Dale Young said once that's always stuck with me, which is that some of us love books so much that the only way we could show that love was to write one of our own. And if you feel inspired by the works of other people, I think that's just a wonderful place to start your own writing from. And just allow yourself to love the process, love the texture and feel and taste of words, and see where they take you. And may it be the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I have a question for Margaret, just briefly. Did you invite these poets, or all of the poets in the anthology, to write a poem about responding to the earth, or did you?
That's a good question. Thank you for that question. No, what I did was to write a call, and a call to send poems. And I was the final judge, but David Leff and Rhonda Ward were first readers. We got 1,000, 1,500 poems. We tried to reach into as diverse neighborhoods and corners of Connecticut as we could. So we read poems by lots and lots of people, and we gradually winnowed it down to 63. I want to say that the anthology is organized by poem, not by poet. I mean, the anthology really does kind of, in my mind at least, maybe it's only in my mind, but you know, start in one place and take you on a journey that educates and possibly changes your mind. You know, so it's not alphabetical by poet. It's not arranged by unknown to more reputable or known poets. It's organized by poem, and I really got a kick out of doing it that way. Something else I really loved is hearing everyone this afternoon read the poems. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, this anthology really is good. Listen to that. Really, I mean, when you hear, that's why I have loved these Zoom readings. And one thing I would say to people who are starting out writing your own poems is read them aloud, hear your voice, stumble on the words that stumble, rejoice on the ones that really sound great, and as Sarah said, taste good in your mouth. Yeah, that's part of it.
Can I go back to that question of how one starts a poem? I like the idea of Margaret's book being a journey, one large poem that takes us a place perhaps we didn't expect to get. And I think that's really what poems do for many of us. When they're working well, they are a journey. We start with a line that perhaps resonates with us for reasons we don't even know. It may come up from our toes, and give ourselves to it and let it take us where it will. And without knowing exactly, perhaps with some suspicion, but without really knowing where it's going to take us, as if we were riding a horse that knows how to get to the barn better than we do, let it lead us, and let us surprise us at the end with something that tells us it's better than we knew how to be, because we didn't know we were going to get there. And it roiled up, and that's how I like a poem to end, with a not with a whimper, but with a surprise.
I want to ask Ben Grossberg if he knew when he started his poem whether or not he would be inviting the reader, as he so movingly does, to participate in the experience with him of planting that tree. It does start off like a conversation. I mean, you can tell you're talking with someone, but one of the things that really knocks me out about the poem is how the reader is invited to touch and to plant and to participate with you. And one of my thoughts is that poetry in general is an antidote against loneliness, because it reaches out to others. No poem is complete until it's heard by a listener.
I love that idea, Margaret. You know, sometimes poems can be conversations that you need or want to have, but there's no one around to have them with, so the poem takes that place. And thinking about what you said, what occurs to me is that the invitation is almost defensive in nature. The poem is called Not Children, and the first sentence is, I know. So it comes from a sort of defensive impulse. I'm a gay man. I don't have kids. That wasn't really an option for me, but I do have apple trees. And starting from the sort of defensive place that they mean that much to me. You know what I mean? So in a way, the poem is sort of in something that I need to convince the world of, and maybe myself too. You know, so that's I think where the invitation comes.
I think if more of us treated the things of this earth as our own children, assuming we treat our children well, that would be a really good thing. Jose, I loved your poem, the wisdom that you finally understood that came from your mother and grandmother. I was wondering about the experience of writing that poem, what that was like for you.
Well, thank you, Margaret. So that poem, you know, there's been so much talk about immigration, of course, and the conditions that bring so many Latinos here to the U.S. and one way or the other, documented or undocumented. And a lot of times, you know, you hear people talking about the violence, the poverty, so on and so forth. And yet, you know, there's another piece there too, and that's the climate, right? Which when we talk about that area, Latin America in particular, it doesn't look so promising, right? And so, you know, people think of it in terms of money, yes, but there's a whole cycle, right? So, you know, when I look at my family and when I look at the reasons why they came, certainly it was the beginning of a war. Certainly it was violent, but there were also all these ecological reasons as well, you know, whether earthquakes or hurricanes. You know, I had family who were killed right around that time as a result of this major hurricane that took place. That it wasn't the winds, it was actually the rains that caused all these landslides and wound up killing, you know, I'll never forget it. I heard a house, a building collapse and killed family members. And so, you know, that's something that I think as a child, you don't really reflect on. And even as adults, we don't really reflect on until much later. And so, you know, when I thought of the earth and I thought of my mom, you know, and right around this time, I always think of her planting her roses, planting her vegetables, you know, and having this connection that I thought maybe I could try to capture somehow.
I love that response about connection, because it reminds me that the personal and the political and now the planetary are all very definitely connected.
Sure.
Which is what you just said. Susannah, your storm poem is I think a knockout, the way it starts with the storm and the emergency preparations, and it you know, it's a little microcosm of the situation we're in. It really works beautifully, and I don't know how I think its appeal must be there for everyone. I live in the woods, and we got at the end of a dirt road, and I'm always losing power in storms and stuff. So, I mean, I just identified totally with the, you know, the literal situation, the literal aspect of the poem, and all the questions.
You know, we're having these events, these wind events, and that are increasing in power and frequency, and it just, you know, that started there, and then obviously it you know, kind of goes to a more metaphoric a place, but it just started because it's, you know, it's the presence of these storms is sort of demanding a reaction to both the situation of the storm itself, but, you know, the larger issue. And yeah, I don't usually write poems like this. It's much more, it's sort of a block poem, and so it was kind of a new thing for me. So that was kind of interesting in itself. So thank you.
Yeah, great.
Could I just add one quick response to Susannah's poem? Which,
sure.
When I read her poem, it just filled me with a sense of panic. The pace of the poem, you know, when you're talking about the increasing, the frequency, the power, I just think that really came through in that poem brilliantly. So I just loved it.
Thank you.
Davine or Fred, do you all have any comments to talk about your poems?
I'll just mention that I read the poem at Washington's Earth Day virtual that Margaret was a guest. And that was April 22nd. And it was the day after Derek Chauvin was found guilty of murdering George Floyd. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to have written the sense that I was something like happy before the death of George Floyd. That is the sense I was trying to convey, that once that death happened, everything changed.
Well, and I one of the things that I was so moved by in your poem too, I mean, is that this, you know, the tradition of the pastoral, of being, you know, in one's pastoral green retreat where one can be happy. And that pastoral tradition doesn't work now for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is that there is no retreating from social injustice and from cruelty, and that all of these things are connected. Any kind of social injustice, economic injustice is very much connected to environmental grief and environmental injustice. And I think we need to remember those connections. And I thought your poem did that beautifully.
Thank you.
So, Fred, got a comment?
I'll just say, you know, about my poem, it really reflects on my childhood. You know, I grew up in Norwich, Connecticut. I grew up right across the street from the college that I teach at now, the Rivers, and Melrose Park is right adjacent on the left-hand side to Three Rivers. So I just went through my old neighborhood in my childhood, and the golf course is right down the street. So I used to like snatch golfers' golf balls and sell them back for the quarter and stuff like that, you know, and BMX at the school. And so it was my coming of age of childhood and then adolescence, as the poem, you know, continues, and then into, of course, adulthood and even into fatherhood. And then looking back of how much of my life was really outdoors, like, you know, in the yard, my grandmother's yard. Like when I said I miss collard greens and okra and seeded grapes, all that was in our backyard. Like we had 2 pear trees, an apple tree, a grapevine, a cherry stone tree, a vegetable garden, a flower garden, a rose bush, all within our yard. And so, and then the berries, the wild berries were across the street, the wild berry patch. So I'm literally walking through my neighborhood that, of course, you know, all those elements of nature are not there no more. Like the berry bush is gone, and the ramp we used to jump BMX bikes over and so forth is now houses are built on it in somebody's yard. And so, you know, I'm just really paying homage and, you know, really apologizing too for, you know, not doing as much as I could and do more, you know, when it comes to global warming and climate crisis. Margaret Nelson's,
Marilyn.
I'm getting the poet laureate. Marilyn Nelson's poem that she has in there, you know, called Buttheads. And she's, I mean, it really sums it up. Like when I read it, I'm like, I'm a butthead, you know, because I'm just continuing to allow these things to happen. So I thought the least I could do if I'm not going to be more active and so forth is at least, you know, humbly and gracefully apologize to nature.
Well, you did, but you also celebrated it, which was wonderful.
Yes,
and showed relationship, not separation, but interconnection, which I think is wonderful. Let's see, we started with Jenny. Maybe we should end with Jenny. Where's Jenny? There's Jenny.
Here I am.
Okay.
I have to echo what you said, how wonderful it is to hear the poems, because of course helping to put the book together. I've read them all several times, but hearing them is a different experience. So I thank everyone for that. My stone wall poem, I love the old tumbled down stone walls just because they're so interesting to look at, but also to me, they reflect kind of the history of the earth, you know, starting with the ice age that, the last ice age that dropped so many of these stones into New England, and the history of people, farmers, and others who have interacted with these stones in various ways. And so to me, they represent kind of an intersection between the earth and the people in it, and, you know, how they connect. And I find them fascinating, so I had to write about them. So that's the Stonewall poem.
Well, the stone wall, as you pointed out, is a little ecosystem.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I have a lot of stone walls where I live, and my patio is just big, lots of stones. I love to have people out there, and all of a sudden the black snake who lives in their stone wall, that's his apartment building, right? Comes out to join the party. It's sometimes a little bit of a shock. But Sarah, you spoke about writing poems, but you didn't say anything about your poem. And maybe Anthropocene Birthday is a wonderful way to end.
Well, the poem is the closing poem in my collection, The Mouth of Earth, as well as being part of the anthology that we're celebrating in this reading. And for me, the poem was interested in something I was interested in doing with the book and am interested in doing in my life, which is trying to find moments of sustenance and renewal, even amidst the great pain, both personal pain and collective pain that arises when we look at what's happening to our planet. And leaning into that rather than trying to step away from it is very difficult, but it has also reaffirmed my connection to the natural world and my love of it and my experience of it as really Mother Earth. That's such a cliche that it's easy to forget that it's also true. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And about cliches, I mean, I think, I can't remember which poet it was who said that a cliche is an invitation to imagination to take it over and reinvent it. So yeah, Mother Earth indeed. I see Bessie Reyes here, and I want to thank her for her advice and counsel. She was one of the advisors in the background of this anthology. There's Bessie.
Hi, Bessie.
And I think we're probably running out of time by now. I don't know. Is anyone feeling the urge to speak?
Well, I know there's a question in the chat about what's next for the book, promotion, tour, readings, and so forth. So I don't know if you want to address that question, Margaret.
Okay. Well, this is the last of a series of Zoom anthology group readings that have been going on, particularly in April. Now my calendar seems to be showing live readings. I have to say that in the last month, I've been either been part of either group readings or solo readings or whatever, about 14 of them, and organizing a lot of them. So I'm sort of in planning mind shock right now. I can't plan another thing. But what I can do is issue a big invitation to all of the poets, as we did in the beginning when the book came out, issue another one saying, hey, talk to your library, do whatever, you know, the next time you have a reading, invite, you know, take copies of the Waking Up to the Earth with you. But, you know, Grayson Books is a wonderful press. It's a small press. It's a, what, 2-person operation, Jenny? right?
No. Yep, that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
So there's a limit to what we can do.
Right. And so I would invite all of you and the other poets in Waking Up to the Earth just to remember that the book is there when you have opportunities to read. It is actually fun to organize a reading and to participate like this. I love listening. I mean, I think this is great. People are complaining about the days of Zoom being over and oh boy, live readings. But I mean, Zoom readings are great, and they've brought us large audiences and gotten, you know, here we all are together talking with each other, and that doesn't happen every day. So I would say, let's keep the ball rolling. Let's keep, we haven't, you know, I've been pretty careful. They're, you know, spreading the readings around. There's a live reading coming up in New Canaan at the Land Trust there on May 15th. There is a reading at Arts Cafe Mystic on June 20th, which is also the summer solstice. These are anthology live readings that I know of. There are some events beginning to crop up in September, discussion group poems that the anthology poets, some anthology poets have been invited to participate in. There's going to be an anthology reading at the Hillstead on September 12th. And I'm going to be reading from my new book, The Glass Globe, that night. That's going to be my first read from the book. So I hope we can all come and have an Anthropocene birthday party at the Hillstead. So anyway, you're empowered now to go out and set up readings and start discussions in your local library, and I will be happy to help. So, you know, that's, I don't know whether I answered your question, Fred, but.
Oh, it was, I think, Betsy's question, but you.
Oh, well, whoever it was.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Definitely, no, you definitely did. And I just want to say that I made the decision a couple of days ago to use the book in my Intro to Lit class in the fall and have the students study it. I do a Page to Poet series with my Intro to Lit class. And so I'm going to have them actually we study poetry, fiction, and drama. So for the poetry section, I'm going to have them study this book, and I will be setting up a reading in October-ish. I don't know, we'll be live or Zoom, depending on what the school's parameters are and so forth. But I'll definitely be in contact with you and put an open call to poets to participate in that as well. So.
Great, Fred. I know John Anderson is using the book in his writing workshop in the fall,
nice.
Which is great. There was something else, but it just went out of my head. I'm sorry, but yeah. Okay, I want to thank the audience for being with us.
Yes.
Any more? We want to thank you, Margaret,
everybody,
for what you've done to make all of this possible, all of these readings and ongoing events.
That's what I wanted. I mean, I like that word, ongoing. So let's keep it going.
Glad it is.
Thank you so much, Margaret, and thank you to all the poets for participating in tonight's program. We do have the book at the Norfolk Library for anyone who is nearby and wants to check it out. And it's just this reading tonight and this reflection, and the reflection after the readings was just absolutely marvelous. So thank you so much to everyone for coming. Thank you to the participants and to the audience. And yes,
I thought of two more programs. Ben Grossberg is sponsoring a program on, I think it's May 23rd in a park in Hartford. Ben helped me out. Sarah Strong and I are going to be there, but also a lot of people, poets reading their poems. I'm not sure how Sarah and I are going to judge them on the spot, but anyway, that's the challenge. And there's also a workshop that Rhonda Ward is leading at Arts Cafe Mystic for high school poet laureates on May 23rd, and that should be a lot of fun too. So that's all I can think of.